Good morning. This is Natalie Gilley with the Bicycle Alliance of Minnesota. Welcome to the Minnesota Bike Walk Leadership Network webinar. I'll share my screen here and we'll get started. So just a moment here. Today we're going to be welcoming folks from Mahnomen, and then we will be hearing a little bit about bikeable community workshops, and then about specifically the community workshop that we had. There we go. Okay, so you should all be seeing a screen in front of you that says Minnesota Bike Walk Leadership Network, Biking with the Stars in Mahnomen. So welcome. Today's July 20th, 2022, and we're going to talk about Mahnomen today. Before we get started, we'd like to see who's here, and we do have a trivia question for you to answer. So if you can go to the chat box and put your name and location, and then answer the question, if you know the answer. What does the word Mahnomen mean? So we're just starting with a little bit of local trivia here. And if you can use the chat box, we'll be watching that and welcome people here from across the state. The purpose of today's webinar and the Minnesota Bike Walk Leadership Network is to connect local bike walk leaders to share stories and ideas about how they're lifting up the walking and biking culture in their communities. We have a land acknowledgement statement, which I'll read here. We want to acknowledge that we occupy the ancestral land of several indigenous groups, including the Dakota, Ojibwe, Ho-Chunk, Cheyenne, Oto, Iowa, and Meskwaki people. We honor with gratitude the land itself and the people who have stewarded it throughout generations. We affirm the Bicycle Alliance of Minnesota's commitment to a partnership with Native nations and urban Indian communities. Despite centuries of colonial violence, this is still and always will be Indigenous land. Indigenous peoples are still here, demonstrating innumerable talents and gifts in the midst of continued oppression. They must be celebrated and uplifted. You'll see a link here if you'd like to find out what land that you are currently located on or you do work on. You can click on the link and you can find out. So this is the Minnesota Bike Walk Leadership Network, and we have upcoming webinars for Q3 and Q4. On September 21st, we'll be talking about bikes and food access in the Twin Cities. In Q4, October, we'll spotlight the community of Frazee. So it's exciting to get back out to West Central Minnesota. And I think a lot of people on this webinar will be interested in that local story coming out of Frazee, Minnesota. And then in November, we'll be featuring the topic of the BIPOC LCI seminar. So in a slide or two here, I'll share a little bit more detail about that seminar coming up this fall. If you're joining today as a guest and you would like to become a member of the Leadership Network, you can email me at natalie@bikemn.org or go to our website, bikemn.org, and join in that way as well. And you can get connected with our newsletter too through Bikemen. Many of you may already be members of the Minnesota Safe Routes to School Network as well. They have upcoming webinars on Thursday, August 4th and September 1st. And both of those are from 10 to 11. If you'd like to join that network, if you're not already connected there, you can email Julie j@movemn.org. There are a couple of really exciting educational programs that are in full swing and are rolling out here. Walk Bike Fun is our youth curriculum, and registration is now open for the Walk Bike Fun training in Grand Marais. So you'll see the link in the chat box here. If Ted, you want to pop that in the chat box, we welcome folks to register for that, and then reach out to Angela at bikemn.org if you would like to learn more about Walk Bike Fun. We'll be doing the BIPOC League Cycling Instructor Seminar in October this year. This is a multi-day course which will be held on October 14th through the 16th. And so this is very exciting to offer this. And one of the things to know is that there are some prerequisites for the LCI seminar, and one is to go through the Traffic Skills 101. So these smart cycling courses will be offered and are held monthly throughout the summer on the last Friday and Saturday of the month. So again, get connected with Angela or go to our website if you'd like to make sure that you fulfill that prerequisite of those classes so that you can attend the League Cycling Instructor Seminar in October. And as I mentioned at the beginning, we'll be having a November presentation to kind of recap that and hear some stories. So at this point in the webinar, I am going to introduce Tim Brackett, who's our Minnesota GreenCorps person here at Bike MN this year, and he's been the lead for our Bikeable community workshops. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the webinar over to Tim, and then he can do a little further introduction and then welcome our speakers today. Welcome to the webinar, Tim.
Thank you, Natalie. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. First, I'm really grateful for John Large, who is with the Mahnomen County, and Jacob Reuter with Department of Transportation for joining us today to talk about the experience of Bikeable community workshops from their perspective. Next slide, please. As Natalie said, I'm Tim Brackett. I'm with the Minnesota GreenCorps, and every year Bike MN hosts a Minnesota GreenCorps member and gives them the responsibility of facilitating these Bikeable community workshops. This year we did 6 total workshops, and I've been telling people it's been the most fun year of my adult life. So they're a lot of fun, and I've enjoyed traveling around Minnesota conducting these workshops. Next slide, please. A Bikeable community workshop is a community-specific experience designed to make your community more bike-friendly. The workshop is 8 hours in length and provides folks in the community with an opportunity to learn and collaborate together with each other, with staff from Bike MN and also staff from the Minnesota Departments of Health and Transportation. Next slide, please. Bikeable community workshops are facilitated through a partnership with Bike MN and the Minnesota Departments of Health and Transportation. The team putting on these workshops is led by the Minnesota GreenCorps member and includes professional staff from Bike MN as well as the Departments of Health and Transportation. The GreenCorps member is the Bikeable Community Workshop Coordinator and is the key liaison between the Bikeable Community Workshop team and the community, working with both groups to make sure the workshop has everything that it needs to succeed. The community team tasked with logistical support necessary for hosting a workshop is comprised of 3 to 5 individuals, one who serves as the community coordinator. This individual facilitates at the local level, working with the Bikeable Community Workshop Coordinator and the community on logistics, route design, and the invite list. Typical workshop participants include public health officials, engineers, law enforcement, planners, school administrators, elected officials, community leaders, and local advocates. Next slide, please. A Bikeable community workshop includes classroom presentations covering bike basics and the 6 E's for promoting safe and enjoyable cycling in your community. Those 6 E's are equity, encouragement, engagement, education, evaluation and planning, and engineering. These workshops also include an on-bike ride audit, an hour-long group ride where participants audit the bike friendliness of their community. After the classroom presentation and on-bike ride audit, workshop participants engage together in a collaborative action planning session where they work together to identify 6 and 12-month targets for making their community more bike friendly. Next slide, please. Simple steps to making bicycling convenient and safe pay huge dividends in civic, community, and economic development, as well as the overall quality of life. Hosting a Bikeable community workshop will help your community make concrete actions to achieve these benefits for your community. For those that are considering applying to host a Bikeable community workshop in the future, at the end of this webinar, we'll give you a link to this year's planning guide, which will let you look over the process and know the time commitment involved, as well as other logistics. So that sort of covers what Bikeable community workshops are. Now I'm going to bring in my partner, Jacob, with the Department of Transportation to talk about his perspective as a member of the Bikeable community workshop team. We're going to hold off on questions until the end after Jacob and John have both spoke. And so if you want to get the questions in the chat now, we'll follow up with those at the end. Welcome, Jacob.
Thanks, Tim. Good afternoon, y'all. My name is Jake Reuter, and I'm a active transportation coordinator with the Minnesota Department of Transportation. Natalie, if you could go to the next slide, please, we can get into a little bit about state agency partnership with the Bicycle Community Workshop program. Next slide. So the Minnesota Departments of Health and Transportation have collaborated with BikeMN on bikeable community workshops since their inception. This is a really long-running program that has brought a successful educational and experiential learning model around the state, and has really helped us to cultivate communities in which we have folks who understand what it takes to be bike-friendly and how to help push to make that happen in their communities. Here in Minnesota, we're fortunate to have a unique collaborative relationship between state agencies, between our departments of transportation and health. That's really a model for how we can work together to advance both active transportation and healthy living throughout the state. Next slide, please. So why, as state agencies, do we participate in bikeable community workshops? These are opportunities for us to bring community stakeholders together and establish relationships, particularly before we're in a situation where there's sort of like a pressure-based decision on the line or something that we're trying to iron out on a time-sensitive basis. It helps us to create those relationships in advance and have that relationship capital to draw on when it comes time to talk about future decisions. These new connections also set the groundwork to advance future opportunities for bicycling, which we'll talk a little bit about on the next slide, Natalie. Thank you. There are a number of ways that work can be advanced after a bikeable community workshop through state programs. So MnDOT has an active transportation program that offers both infrastructure and non-infrastructure grant opportunities for cities, counties, and other towns to help advance infrastructure and non-infrastructure approaches to making their communities more bike-friendly. We also have a robust Safe Routes to School program in Minnesota, which is a great way to help fund initiatives that make it easier for kids and their parents and people who work at schools to walk and bike to school safely. There's also regionally led planning work, like what's going on in the southwest part of the state with the Southwest Regional Development Commission's upcoming regional bike plan, and our work in collaboration with the Department of Health, where they offer grant opportunities through their statewide health improvement partnership. Next slide, please. And I believe at this point, I'll ask Tim to introduce John, who will talk a little bit more about the journey in Mahnomen in particular.
Thank you, Jake. And yeah, we welcome John, who is the county engineer at Mahnomen County. We worked with you as part of the BCW team in Mahnomen, and I'll let him share his perspective of how that works from his end. Welcome, John.
Yeah, thank you. Good morning, everyone. I think I'll start off a little bit, maybe with a little bit of information about Mahnomen and Mahnomen County. Mahnomen is the county seat within Mahnomen County. So when I say Mahnomen, it kind of can go with both of them. Mahnomen is one of few counties in the nation, I believe. There's only a handful that lie completely within an Indian reservation. Mahnomen lies within the White Earth Indian Reservation. And so a lot of things that we do are going to affect the White Earth Indian Reservation, and a lot of things they do affect what we do. So anyway, we work together quite a bit on different things. Some things that we have in common is that Mahnomen is a very poor community. We have very low incomes. Along with that comes one of the things that we rank historically 87 out of 87 counties for health outcomes and health factors. So a lot of that we want to see trying to promote active type activities to help out with that sort of thing. But to get into the bikeable communities, I just want to go over some of the people that are key in here. First off was the city of Mahnomen and the city of Mahnomen administrator, Carrie. She was kind of our community coordinator in this whole process and got us all on board. We had Headwaters Regional Development Commission that we had great help from them in putting together an application to be a bikeable community workshop holder. We had Naomi and Tony that helped us out quite a bit with that. the Department of Transportation. We had Jane and Mary with District 4, and then also Jake was quite helpful through this process. Myself with Mahnomen County, we had Norman Mahnomen Public Health, Kimberly, that helped quite a bit in the process. And then White Earth Indian Reservation, we had Jedediah, who was our community resource officer that participated in this process, along with our two educational facilities in Mahnomen. We had Mahnomen Public Schools and St. Michael's Public School that also participated in this. So you can go to the next slide. So how did it start in Mahnomen? It was kind of interesting. An email came out from Naomi with Headwaters Regional Development asking if we would be interested in that, and it went to our city administrator. And so she sent out an email that came to the rest of us, or came to several of us. And with that, a few phone calls were made and we were well on our way. Naomi, she took, like I said, the lead on this by really putting together a good application for us to ask for to hold a community workshop. We had a great core group of people that participated in this process, and so that really made things go well. You can go to the next slide. So once our application was made, and we got an email back from Naomi, and it said congratulations that we had been chosen to host a workshop. And the first thing that went through my mind is, oh, what did we do? Now what do we do? This looks like a whole bunch of work that and we don't know anything about it. But luckily, Bike MN, they have this wonderful thing called the Bikeable Community Workshop Planning Guide, which actually helped us out quite a bit when we had questions. And they met with us, and this core group that we had worked very well together and was able to come together. We had each person, it seemed, took a piece of what needed to be done, from finding a location to hold the Bikeable Community Workshop itself, to arranging for food for it, to arranging for what we were going, a bike route, all the things that kind of went into it. Our group jumped in and we were able to accomplish it. So you can go to the next slide. So then the planning, this core group, I say, we were already in place. Oh, and I kind of went over all of that, the who took care of different things. We had the participant invitations. We discussed who we should invite to be included, all the things, the locations and what we have. So then we can go to the next one. So one of the things was putting together for the second session was a route, and I just included this as kind of what we did. One of the things, this is one part that I worked on, was coming up with a route, and some of the things in there was to keep it under 5 miles. And as you look at a route and trying to include some key things that you want to look at through your community, sometimes it's hard to keep that under 5 miles, but we were successful. We did a 4-mile route, basically, that we went on a ride, and was very enjoyable, I thought. And we came up with a lot of good information from being able to bike that route and everyone getting their perspectives of it. You can go to the next slide. So the sessions, what did they consist of? The first session is a virtual session, and it was held during the evening, one evening. And I'm not going to lie to you, I was kind of dreading that, as I believe that was a very nice evening. It was one of our nice spring days that we hadn't had a whole lot at that point. And here I had to go on an online session for a few hours. But to tell you the truth, Tony made it very interesting, and the time went by very quickly, and it was very interesting, very informational, and helped out quite a bit. From there, the The next session, of course, was an in-person meeting where we met and went over a few things, and then was the bike audit where we actually got to go out biking. And that was one of the most enjoyable days that I've had. I say any day I get to go out and ride bike and get paid for working for it is a pretty good day. So in the sessions, we went over a lot of different questions about making, of course, your community more bikeable. What things there are that make it a little bit more challenging, and in that route that we rode, I kind of put us in different situations where you kind of looked at that. One thing with our community, with our lower income residents, that will say it's, I think, unlike some other communities, a lot of our people that bike and walk aren't necessarily doing it just for recreation or exercise. That is their main means of transportation to get to work or get to places. So we have a lot of that within the community, and that's why trying to make our community more friendly to that is important for all of us. Out of this, both sessions, I guess we came up with different plans or different ideas on how to move forward with ideas that came up with it. And that's where Bike MN kind of put all that together, and then they give that back to us as a kind of a finished report. And it's something that we can use to move forward. And actually then the end of the sessions, that's not it. They do follow-ups to see that we are moving forward with some of the recommendations and some of the ideas that were brought forward in these meetings. That's pretty much the gist of what I had to talk about and to let you know. And from there, I guess we can go on to talking about any kind of questions that anyone might have about hosting. So I'll turn it back to you, Tim.
Thank you, John. And the big question everyone's asking is, what's the answer to the trivia question?
Oh, so the answer is it would be wild rice. And I saw that someone had put on there, it was food from the water, or what, on top of the water, or so I would guess that would be very close. But wild rice is the what I've been told.
Thank you. If there are any other questions at this time for John, for Jake from Department of Transportation, or myself, go ahead and ask them. Feel free to drop that in the chat or just raise your hand and ask the question. For those that know me, they know I love talking about these workshops. So ask me a question, I'll talk about it forever.
I mean, I guess I'll ask. So you said you were kind of pleasantly surprised with some of the turnouts you got for these meetings. So like who are some of the folks that were showing up, and coming to the table, and just kind of curious if you were surprised by any of the feedback or comments you got from those who participated in the community.
Is that question for
any of you? Yeah.
Go ahead, John.
I guess I wasn't surprised by it. We had a good cross section. Like I said, we had people from public health, we had people from the city, myself from the county, from the reservation. We just had a pretty good cross section, I think, of people, and they all gave good comments and from different perspectives. A lot of them didn't necessarily ride bike a lot, I think, throughout the city, so or the town of Mahnomen, so that their perspectives of when we did ride through was very helpful.
I think from my end, the biggest surprise for me, and it didn't happen in Mahnomen, but it happened in a couple of communities where elected officials showed up, and they weren't there to grandstand or draw attention to themselves, but they dug in and did the work with the rest of the community. And that was something that surprised me, but also made me know that there was buy-in in a lot of these communities to do these workshops.
It looks like I think Maya had a question in the chat.
Yeah, so to discuss some of the challenges, infrastructure and non-infrastructure you saw on the bike audit. I'll let John and Jake speak to that, and then.
I can start off. So when you talk about challenges in infrastructure, I guess that's one of the things I think why we were interested in pursuing this community workshop, to give us ideas of where we needed to improve infrastructure, and then also to be able to utilize this meeting in the city is working through a new comprehensive plan that I think many of the ideas of this workshop will be included in that. And so then that gives you the opportunity to start identifying those and then start looking at funding opportunities to get some of the infrastructure challenges done. Some of the things are, intersections that might be dangerous and how we could improve them for both biking and walking. Different infrastructures that could be put in place. I know we have a couple county state aid highways that we're going to be looking that run through the city of Mahnomen that are going to be reconstructed in the coming years here. It's in the future. How can we look at some things that we learned through this workshop to include in those type of constructions so that we can put those infrastructures in place? So those are some of the things that helped me, I know, from this workshop.
Yeah, I'll add perhaps on the non-infrastructure side, one of the challenges that I think can come from this is from a workshop like this is having participants who are all over the range of experience and confidence in terms of being on a bike, and particularly riding on roadways with other car and truck traffic. And so it's a challenge a little bit to get everybody on the same page and make sure that we're all riding as a group. But the opportunity there is that we get to hear and the group gets to hear from each other the range of different things that do or do not feel comfortable in the community. And it can help to illuminate some of the potential changes that might make it more appealing for a person to decide to bike or walk to the grocery store who otherwise maybe feels like it's something that's a little bit beyond what they're comfortable with or willing to try.
I agree, and I heard a lot in these communities, in all 6 communities, that people said this isn't the riding I'm used to doing, and so that was the big challenge I saw, and it plays off of what Jake is saying, is getting people just to imagine biking for more than recreation, but to do that in their day-to-day life. That was the challenge that I saw as well. Are there any other questions? These are great questions so far.
This is Mary Safgren, and I was involved with it. And I think what was really important, I work for MnDOT out of Detroit Lakes, is that we have a really good core team. And so there's different efforts, as John talked about, we're hoping to get an active transportation planning grant to further planning for the improvements that the county's making on their 2 roads, and Highway 59 splits the community. So I learned a lot on being involved in, and we're going to look at, how to make crossing 59, safer for bikes and peds. And so I think I want to emphasize that the working relationships up there are really good. And that's what I think has made it successful. And we're not done yet. There's lots to come.
Awesome. Yeah, that's the other important thing is, so when I start my GreenCorps term, or anyone who does, they spend the first month reading 10 years worth of bikeable community workshop reports. And the thing I noticed this year that I noticed in the reports going into it is 3 to 5 engaged people that work well together is all you need to make this happen. In fact, sometimes you want 5 to be the max. You need more than 5, and it can start to get a little messy. So at 3 to 5 is a great team, especially if they're working together already. Tony, do you have something to say?
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in. I was part of the BCW in Mahnomen, and for me, it was a great experience because coming in new to Headwaters Regional Development Commission, it put me in a situation where I got to work with Mary and John and Natalie with Bike MN. And it's amazing the number of connections that you make with those people on a week-to-week basis. I'm working with Natalie on a couple of things, and I've got Mary Safgren and the ship coordinator, Kim, working on a transportation plan right now. So there's so many things that the Bikeable Community Workshop opened up for me as an individual, coming in new to the Headwaters Development Commission, and mix that with a little bit of fun of jumping on a bike. And I'm one of the people that probably hasn't been on a pedal bike in multiple years, and a little intimidated looking at it like, oh man, I got a 5-mile bike, but it was great. We stopped and talked, and it was a great experience. I highly recommend it to anybody. If you've got an engaged community, it's a great way to strengthen some of those relationships.
Thank you. That's so true. It was good to meet you up there, Tony. It was the first time we met in person, and yeah, so many connections come out of those workshops. Carl has a good question for me. He asked, do you have takeaways from coordinating the program that you look forward to taking further in your career? What I really learned is how important it is to I learned on the invite list, quality versus quantity, and how important it is. Maybe you're not going to have 20 people show up, but if the 5 to 6 people you have show up are the right people, the quality of who you invite and the quality of who you bring to the table matters as much as the quantity. And so as I move forward in my career, I'll always look at quality and quantity for my invite list when I'm assembling people at the table to do work like this. Thanks for that question, Carl. That was a great chance for me to reflect. Thank you.
So I work for a Minnesota retailer, and they have a lot of properties around the state. And what I'm wondering about is, how do local businesses play into improving bike infrastructure in communities? Like what can local businesses do, and how do they react when we say, well, I want to put a bike lane down Main Street or something like that? Like I'm really interested in how I can influence from that side. Like, how can we make just general transportation better? And especially in like suburban shopping areas, usually you're riding along and then the path is gone. It's just grass. So like, I'm curious how to make that interface work.
There are a couple of routes. First of all, being a bike-friendly business through the League of American Bicyclists is important. That one is a great selling point to have for your business, but 2, the process to do that helps you learn how to engage. And then second, I would say working through the chamber, that always helps. All these community workshops, we invited at least one person from the Chamber of Commerce, but then we tried to invite local business leaders who had already shown interest in cycling as well. But someone from the chamber got an invite at every workshop. So I would suggest becoming a bicycle-friendly business and then working through the chamber to get to your goals. Natalie, do you have any other input on that?
No, I think those are good insights, and the businesses having those involved, those will help your bicycle friendliness overall as a community. So the more bicycle friendly businesses that you have that can get engaged and become potential sponsors for events, help to be volunteers for some of the different trainings, things like that, is really helpful, and just really improves the bicycle friendliness overall from the community. So thanks. Good question. It's and I see Carl has put in a comment here too. I'm not sure how many in the group here are from the Minneapolis area, but Carl had mentioned He posted his email in the chat box here if folks wanted to follow up with Move Minnesota. So you can look at the chat box here, Carl at Move Minneapolis. I apologize, I misspoke. Carl is at Move Minneapolis, so we'll get this correct. Carl at moveminneapolis.org. I apologize, Carl. Hopefully I have that correct now. We'll share it correctly with the group. So that's great. And I see Barb, you've raised your hand, so I'll send it over to Barb here to ask a question.
I was actually just going to respond to Ben in that the minimum for a bike-friendly business would be bike parking. It just blows my mind in Rochester still, where I live, that most of the sort of strip malls don't have bike parking. Very few of the grocery stores have bike parking, and or if they do, sometimes it's really old-fashioned stuff that you really can't use a U-lock on. And it's just, I think that's sort of a low bar of entry, but I think it's really important. We conduct what we call social rides every Tuesday evening, and they end up either at an ice cream place or a brewery, depending on the week. And you know, we kind of seek out the ones that have bike parking, just or some other accommodation. We were at a brewery last night that there were only 2 people there before we got there, and our group was like 15 or 18, some large number. I think we made their night, actually. But they didn't have enough bike parking, but well, it was adequate. I'll put it like that. So that's my input.
Thank you, Barbara, and Dorian, I see has his hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to reinforce Tim's answer about the bike-friendly business program. I'd really encourage you to download the application and look at the questions that need to be answered regarding infrastructure, education, engagement, and planning. You know, it just gives you a great benchmarking tool to see how bike friendly your business is, and then set some goals for the coming years.
Thank you, Dorian. That's excellent information. Are there any other questions or comments? Maya, I see you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I was just going to ask specifically Jake with MnDOT. Does MnDOT, I guess when you know about bicycle community workshop happening, does MnDOT kind of track and I guess prepare to like field any applications for that grant funding that you mentioned earlier? And like, how does that contribute to, I guess, the process, if that makes sense?
Yeah, good question, Maya. So when we have a bikeable community workshop, we work to both have somebody from our office, Transit and Active Transportation, who's one of the facilitators, but then also make sure that there's at least one person from the MnDOT district that the community is part of at the workshop to sort of share local context or insights, and have another person basically who will help to track what the community is talking about as things they hope to do in the future. We definitely see communities, whether it's Safe Routes to School or the Active Transportation Program, reference things that they've learned through the Bikeable Community Workshop in those applications for grant funding. And I think it's a helpful way to sort of back up information and say, we had a community group get together, we all experienced this together, and we know that this is a need for improvement in a way that sort of documents it as part of a planning workshop or a planning process, and it gives it that extra bit of weight. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you for that answer, Jake. Are there any other questions today? I think with that, as promised, I'm going to put the link to the planning guide in the chat. I always encourage people who are considering applying to look that planning guide over first and make sure that you have the capacity, but also to see what it'll look like. So I'll drop that in the chat. And with that, turn it back over to Natalie for a couple of announcements. Thank you, everyone. Thank you again to John and Jake for co-presenting today and talking about bikeable community workshops. And thank you, everyone, for letting me talk about bikeable community workshops. I love to talk about them. So with that, back to Natalie.
Thank you, Tim. And I do want to just take a moment here to extend our gratitude for Tim Brackett and his service from Minnesota GreenCorps this past year. The Bikeable Community Workshop program and managing all the correspondence and planning for these workshops is no small task. It's a huge undertaking, and he did an excellent job taking that on and managing through a number of transitions and challenges over the course of the past year. So kudos to Tim, and thank you so much for all that you do and have done and will continue to do for bicycling here in Minnesota.
Thank you.
So I will go ahead and share my screen again, because we do have a couple of closing slides here, and then I will hold just a couple of moments here to let Dorian provide an update so that he can share a couple things with you as well. So just to close out here, we can't go without saying that we have a couple of really exciting rides coming up. This is great. I love the colorful slides and the logos and all of this. It just is representative of the energy and the excitement that these celebrations, these community celebrations bring together. So you'll see on the screen the Rock and Roll the Lakes in Albert Lee. That's August 13th. The St. Paul Classic in September on the 11th, and then the Mankato River Ramble in October on the 9th. So some really exciting bike rides coming up here, community celebrations, and the Bikemen event registrations are now open. If you use this code that I'm about to mention here, you can save a little bit, Bike MNMEM 22. So follow the links and register for the rides and join a bunch of really cool people riding bikes in these communities. So that is not the end of bike rides in Minnesota. And on the screen, you see just a couple of bike rides, other bike rides in addition that are happening in Greater Minnesota and the Twin Cities between now and our August webinar. So this is just, a few highlights. So there's lots of bike rides going on throughout the state of Minnesota. Coming up this Saturday, the Pine River Pedal, July 23rd. A Montgomery Ride, Tour de Bun Bike Classic, July 30th, the Fox and Grand Marais, the 31st of July, Tour de Save in Northfield, then Chisago Lakes, Duluth, St. Joseph, Bemidji, and then in the Twin Cities, there's a number of other rides as well. The Adaptive Cycling Weekly Ride, July 21st and 28th, and then other rides in Hopkins, some smart cycling classes, the Steeplechase, the Tour de Tonka, a public art tour on August 9th, West St. Paul Rider, and East Lake Open Streets. These are just a few to mention, and many others are also taking place. So reach out, go to bikemn.org, look at our events calendar and find something that's going on near you, or travel to a place that you'd like to go visit that is hosting a ride and see a new town, ride on bikes and check it out. So our next webinar for the Minnesota Bike Walk Leadership Network is August 19th. So mark that date on your calendar, and we invite you to join us back here again in August. So before we close, I'm going to turn it back over to Dorian for a moment to provide some updates.
Yes, and to answer Mary's question, oh, yes, Maya already did. Yes, there is going to be a BIPOC LCI seminar this fall. So watch our website for registration. And yeah, no problem, Maya. That's I'm glad you were on that. And Natalie, thanks for announcing all those events. I'm wearing my St. Paul Classic t-shirt today. The jerseys for the Classic and the Ramble are going to be on our website to purchase sometime soon. They're very nice this year. I'm looking forward to getting at least one of those. The advocacy update, as I've mentioned before on the webinar, The legislature adjourned without doing anything that was on the Bike Min legislative agenda this year. Very, very frustrating. I guess we will just have to wait and see what happens at the election in November. See who will be the majorities and the chairs of the committees, and start all over again. But I think one of the really exciting advocacy things that we will be engaging in is many of you have heard that MnDOT put out a an active transportation community planning RFP in the spring. They have they're going to select and announce 13 communities sometime soon. Natalie and some of the rest of us on the Bike Min staff will be involved in making sure that the community members are engaged in those planning processes. That's certainly part of the RFP. But Bike MN has been doing this for 10 years, and we're pretty excited about that. Or more than 10 years. We're pretty excited about that and engaging in that process, and maybe coming out of that process with more chapter organizations. I participated in 3 of the bike-friendly bikeable community workshops myself, and we already have a chapter in Wilmer. We already have a chapter in Rochester, but I definitely talked to the people who were in attendance in Roseville about forming a chapter, because I think it's really, really important to have a core group of people engaged in a community that's working with Bike MN to make sure not only that a really high quality plan gets produced, but there's a group there to participate and advocate and facilitate the implementation of those plans after the plan is done. And you should all remember that the planning, there'll be 13 plans done in about the next 12 months. But next spring, they will be applying, have an RFP out for another 13 plans. So make sure that communities that you're involved with take advantage of that opportunity. It's you know, and some of you know me, it's one of the things that I like to do most is working with communities and helping them move forward on the bike and pedestrian friendliness. We have a couple education things coming up. I'd encourage you to either visit walkbikefun.org or bikemin.org. Our Adult Learn to Ride program is in the metro area only, funded. The majority of it is funded by the Metropolitan Council using federal transportation money. But I'm really excited about that program and would love to work with some of you to try and figure out how to bring it to greater Minnesota communities in the years to come. I think it's really, really important that everybody in the community, not just the kids in your schools, are getting education. Next week, we will be welcoming, we've already elected a new group of directors, including some from Greater Minnesota, to the board of directors of the Bicycle Alliance. And I'm looking forward to working with them, and feel free to reach out if you have any ideas about engagement that Bike MN can help with in your community. And I wanted to end with 2 thank yous. Natalie, on Monday, Natalie had her 10-year anniversary with the Bicycle Alliance of Minnesota. So that's pretty exciting. And I too want to add my personal thanks to the great job that Tim has done with the GreenCorps program and the Bikeable Community Workshops and the other things that he's been involved in. So that's it for me, Natalie, unless anybody has a question.
Thanks, Dorian. Thanks for bringing in all those other components. As you may pick up on as we're presenting here, and you're hearing from multiple people from Bike and Men, that there's a lot going on. And we're
Can I add one more thing?
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. Some of you know that I just got back from visiting Nick Mason, our former deputy director, who moved to Malmö, Sweden. And I did a lot of riding in Sweden and a little in Copenhagen, Denmark. And if you have any questions about why mode share is 25% for bicycles in Malmö and 35% for bicycles in Copenhagen, the answer is pretty easy. They're easy, safe, and convenient places to bicycle. There are protected bikeways almost everywhere along busy streets. But a lot of you, I think, have advantages, especially in a place like Mahnomen, that greater Minnesota communities, and many of them are kind of inherently bike friendly. So we're happy to help figure out how to add the few more pieces to the puzzle that can help you be a really bike friendly community. So anyway, sorry to cut you off, Natalie. I had to get that in.
Okay, good. All right. So I think we've heard, and as I was mentioning, there's a lot going on. There's even more than I thought that we had already mentioned, and we're trying to, as we wrap up the webinar today. So thank you so much for all the questions and the comments today. The dialogue is great. I do see a closing question from Sam in the chat box about the hosting of monthly rides, and can they get linked to Bike MN? And Maya's mentioned here in the chat box an answer to that. Yes, we have an events calendar on bikemn.org. And folks, anywhere, if you're across the state of Minnesota and you would like to promote your bike ride through Bike MN, go on there. You can add your event. If you need some assistance getting that on the website, we can help you with that as well. So let us know what's going on around the state. We try to keep up with all the different events going on, but there are a lot of them, and that's exciting, and definitely can continue to promote that if you have events going on in your community. So once again, thank you to John Large, County Engineer from Mahnomen County, and Jake Reuter from MnDOT for your presentations today about the Bikeable Community Workshop, and to Tim for all of your leadership throughout the season for these workshops. Thank you so much for everyone joining today, and we hope to see you in August. Thank you.